Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video recording between me and a UiPath aspirant. In this recording, we are talking about what are the different kind of workflow we can have in UiPath Studio. So in case you are an absolute beginner to UiPath Studio and you are starting with a new project, it is mandatory to know that what are the different kinds of workflow we can have, such as sequence, flowchart, state machine, when to use what and how to use it, right? So in case you also want to have a live conversation with me like this, you can always drop me an email or you can just drop me a note in the comment section and then we can connect. Okay, so let just wait for the studio to fire up. Okay, so in the previous discussion, we have seen that what are the different components we can have in UiPath Studio. So we have seen what is orchestrator, what is studio, what is assistant, right? So now I hope you understand what is UiPath assistant, this guy, what is studio, and what is orchestrator,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so
Yes.
see, first thing, whenever we start any of the automation project, so UiPath, we have to select a kind of workflow. So it is very important to select the correct kind of workflow for any of the automation. So if I go here in the drop down, you will see UiPath provide us 4 type of workflows: the sequence, flowchart, state machine, and the global handler. So it is
Okay.
very important to select the correct type of workflow, because if you select the wrong type of workflow, later in the automation you will face a difficulty in changing the workflow. So at the very beginning it is very crucial to select the correct type of workflow. So let us see one by one what exactly these things are and when should we use what. So this would be the agenda for this video. So this one, that what exactly, which is what is the difference between them and when to use what. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just open a notepad. Okay, so so whenever I give you an automation or whenever you receive a automation, you are sure that what is the objective. So for example, if you are writing an automation where you have to, let's say, input the data, okay, then you have to download something, and then
Okay.
you have to paste the data in Excel and send the email. So if you will see, this process is a pretty straightforward process, right? We are doing step A, step B, step C, and step D, right? So if I consider this like this, so I have step A, step B, step C, and step D, right? So everything is happening in a sequence. there is
Sequence.
there is no decision involved. So it is not like that if A is true, then you have to go here, if it is not true, then you have to go here. It is, everything is happening in a sequence. For example, if I am writing an automation where you are just typing something on the screen, then you downloading the data, then you putting it in an Excel, and then you sending the email to someone, so this is a linear process. So where there is no decision point involved, so everything is happening on a sequence, then in that scenario we go by the sequence where there are no decision point involved. Okay, so if you will see, it's the arrow depicts that if you are creating a sequence where the flow is one by one by one, we go by the sequence. Let me show you one example quickly. So I go here, it will say sequence, I will create it. Okay, so now assuming that my process is just to ask the user the name and print it in a message box, so I will just take a input dialog. Now the label will be, let me just ask the age of the user. Okay, so age, and I will create a variable, control K. So to create a variable, we use a keyboard shortcut called control plus K. So since this is
Yeah.
of the type integer, so as of now it will be string. So I will just create a variable of age, right? And whatever the user give me, I just want to print in a message box. Okay, so I take a message box, and in the message box we want to display the age, right? So simple workflow, just print, get the age and print, so there is no decision involved. So if I go here and run the file, okay, so now where is the workflow? Okay, it is Yeah, the UI path is triggered and it is asking for the age. The age is 29 and we have got 29. Simple workflow, right? So now you can treat this as any piece of automation where there are steps involved one by one in a linear way. Then we use sequence. But what happens when there is a decision involved? For example, now if I tell you that you have to input the age, okay, and based on the age you have to decide whether he is eligible to vote or not. So what is the voting criteria in your country? What age you can vote?
18 years and above.
18 years. Yeah, so like, so let's say if, so now our condition, if is the age is, greater than 18, so you are eligible to vote, right? And and if not,
Yeah,
right, if the age is less than 18, then you are
18,
eligible to no vote, right? So this
no
is
vote. Yeah,
the condition. So now if I ask you that how exactly this thing can we accommodate this thing in a sequence, right? So because in a
mm,
sequence we have seen that everything is happening one by one. So for that, what UiPath provide, it provides us with a new kind of workflow that is called a flowchart, right?
flowchart.
So
Okay,
flowchart will come in picture when you have decision nodes. Okay, so I will create a new flowchart. Okay, now you will say, Mukesh, I can always go here and I can take a if activity, right? So you could have countered me saying that I can take a if activity and then I can check here if the age is greater than 18, then you are vote and then no vote, right? So why should I use flowchart? Correct. So that can be one argument to my right, because you can always use the if condition. So what is the difference of using a sequence and a flowchart then? So if you will see, still you are in a sequence only. So this if is still will execute, it will not execute. You can't have the decision block here. So the decision block will come only once you pass the input dialog and then if here. Now if you have two condition, let's say if the age is greater than 18 and the country is, if I type and the country is India, so then only you are eligible to vote. Now what you will do, you will put one more if inside if, right? So that will create a cluster and it will be difficult to maintain, right? So whenever you are having a decision, so if it is only two like this, always go ahead and use the if block. But otherwise we it is best to use the flowchart. Okay, so whenever you drag and drop a flowchart, you will have some properties. So if you'll go to the properties, you will say it is having a display name. So it is always good to rename. So this is the best practice which is provided by UiPath, and as a developer you should always take care that whichever flowchart or activity you are using, first thing, go to the properties, write the name, why we are writing this flow. So we are writing it to check vote eligibility, right? Next, what exactly this workflow is going to do, so always right click here and add a annotation and then add annotation like this. So this workflow checks age. So why this we are writing, because if tomorrow you went some out of the project and somebody else is coming to the project, so he should be able and you should be able to come in this file, look at the annotation and then see what exactly this workflow is doing. So you can add more details here like variables, argument. So in a real world automation, you will, this block will be very important. So two things as a developer: change the name of the workflow, it should not be the default one, and you should always have an annotation. Okay, got it.
okay, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so now let us try to use the sequence. So I will just copy paste this guy here. So I will copy and paste it here, right? So now if you will see, I have not changed this guy. So input dialog, right? So why we are using the input dialog? So we are using input dialog to get age, right? So it is always good to rename the variables, rename the activities. The one more reason, because if you'll go to the outline here, right, you will see that we have a start node, then we have an input and then this, right? So in the outline you will be easily able to navigate that where exactly you are. So this is why it becomes important. Whenever there is an exception in the project, this will help you that which activity has caused the exception. Okay, so let me go ahead and quickly go here. We will create this variable, control K, control V. sorry, control, okay, sorry, my bad. Control K, I will create a variable of age, right? Now I want to add a flow decision. So if you go to the activities, you will see as soon as you type here flowchart, right? So the flowchart is having these options, only three. One is the flowchart, then a flow switch, then a flow
Okay.
decision,
Mm.
right? So in the workflow, in the controls, so flowchart, we have already used the flowchart, so I hope now you understand the flowchart. The next one is the flow switch. Let's park it for a while and I use the flow decision. So if I drag and drop the flow decision here, right, now it gives me an option of two branching, true branch and a false branch, right? So what is the condition for me? So the now condition would be, if I go to the flow decision property, again the same concept, rename it to, check age. And what is the condition we want to check? We want to check whether the age is less than 18 or not. So I go to the variables, the age is of type string. So what we have to do, we have to convert it to integer 32. How do you convert? Do you know how I can convert the string variable to integer?
This string.
Yeah, so see, now I have to convert. So I we have received the age in a variable called age, right?
Okay. Mm.
Now what we want to do, we want to compare whether it is 18 or less than 18. So can I compare the string with 18?
No.
No, right? Because this is string.
Yeah.
This will take it as 26. So how can I convert? Do you know how can we convert?
Mm.
I'll
No.
tell you, no problem. See, so this is a string type, right? So if I go to the properties and if I type in the condition that age should be greater than 18, right? So UiPath will give me an error. If you'll hover over, what does this error say? Read this, the second line. It says
Okay. Oh, okay.
cannot, just always focus on this error with the editor is giving you, right? Then only you will be able to debug the real world scenarios. Just read the second line.
Option strict on. Option strict on disallows implicit conversion from string to double.
So what does it mean? What do you understand by this thing?
Um, that is, it cannot convert from is it from string to
Double, double.
boolean.
Yeah,
Uh,
double. So double is a kind of data type. Okay, so first of all, I think we should cover one lecture on the
okay.
data types. But as of now, just remember that this is a string type, right? A string can be only
Mm-hmm.
compared to a string. A string cannot be compared to a boolean. Sorry, a double variable. So when we say double, this 18 is a double. Okay. So how can I convert? So what I can do is I
So
have to yeah,
sorry, sorry.
yeah.
I want to ask. Assuming when you mean double, is it because it is two digits number? Assuming it was
No,
9, for
no,
instance.
no. So we have different data types. Let me just give a quick. So we have bool, okay,
Yes,
that is
boolean,
true,
true or false.
true or false, right?
Yeah.
Then we have
Mm-hmm.
integer,
Integer.
that is uh, 1, 2, 3,
One
4,
to
like this,
yes.
okay. So whenever you hard codedly write it, right, the UiPath will treat this as a system in 32. So now how can I convert? So what, it is very simple to convert the data types. All you have to do is you have to type convert, okay. You have to write convert, then you put a dot, and now it will ask you that what, in which format you want to convert. So as of now, we would just want to convert it to the 32. So if I just write here int, I get an option to int 16, int 32, int 64. So these are the different variants. We will talk about this later. So as of now, let's convert it to int 32, right? Which variable we
Mm-hmm.
want to convert? We want to convert the age variable. You understand this one, right? So age
Yeah.
is coming in string, we have converting, and now if I just do it like this, no error, because now we have told UiPath that whatever you get in this string, you have to convert it to a integer and then you have to compare. Otherwise, if I directly put, so UiPath was treating like ABC. So this is a string, right? You cannot convert compare string. So that's why UiPath is asking us to convert. We have asked UiPath, whatever string you get, you just convert it to integer 32 and then you compare. Okay, now the
Okay.
comparison is done. So now it will give me either a true or a false. So if it is true, what I wanted to do, I want to put a message box. So let me go ahead and put a message box and say vote. Okay, so I will write here vote. And if the condition is false, I will copy and paste it here and then point it to here. And if it is false, then no vote. Simple workflow, right? So but we are using a flow chart. Let us try to run this flow. If the age is less than greater than 18, you are vote, and else no vote. Now again, good practice, always rename the activities. Okay, otherwise in the later when you are dealing with a big automation, it will create a problem for you. You would not understand the code why you have written that one. So that's why it is always recommended to name the activities that what they are doing and use the annotation. Okay, I'll save everything. Let me go ahead and run the file. What is the age? Let me put 45 here. 34. Vote. Okay, and let us run it once again. Okay, 12. No vote. Simple workflow, right? So
Yeah.
now you understand, right? What is the difference between a sequence and a flowchart, and when to use
Yeah.
what? So whenever you have a linear requirement, go by the sequence. One more thing important about this thing, you can always use this interchangeably. So I already have this sequence here, right? So if I go to the project, I already have this sequence here. I can always drag and drop this like this, right? So you can always
Mm.
drag and drop a sequence inside the flowchart or a flowchart inside a sequence for that matter. But now it again depends on your implementation, that how are you using it. But whenever there are some decision points involved like this one, right? True, false, you go by using the flow decision. Now if I ask you one question, okay, in the instead of get age, I want to have, get the day of week. So what I will get in the input now? I will get Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? And I
Yeah.
want to print if it is Sunday. Let's say, yeah, okay, let's let's change the requirement a little bit. We will just ask the user to give me a number. Okay, give me a number from 0 sorry 1 to 7. Okay, so
Seven.
the user give me a number. Uh, Let me call this as number, and we will store this in a variable, a new variable. How can I create? I can create control plus K, and I create a number variable, right? Now, if you go to the variables, you can see if you don't want to typecast, it is always good to, change this to the correct type of variable. So the number, I am expecting a number, so I will change it to integer 32. Okay, so that's how now whatever input I will get, I will directly get in the integer 32, and I no need to, convert dot, all this thing is not required now. Okay, so here we are asking user to give us a number. Now whatever the number is, if the number, now the user can give me 1. If the user gives me 1, I have to write Sunday. If the users give me 2, I have to write Monday. If it is 3, then Tuesday, and so on. So how can we do that? In which workflow you will use here now? Tell me.
Um, Flowchart.
Okay.
Hmm?
How? Yeah,
Yeah.
correct flowchart. But how? So we have got here number. The number is available in the num variable. Let me remove this one, right? Now here I have
Mm-hmm.
only two blocks, right? I have true and I have false, right? I do not have the
Yeah.
third option, right? So what? How can I accommodate this thing? Because in the flowchart we only have two things. Now to accommodate such scenarios, if you go back to the activities and if you type here flowcharts, okay, so you will see there is something option called
Switch.
switch.
Flow switch. Yeah.
Okay, drag and drop it here. I'll remove this guy, connect here. Now flow switch, can you see it has having multiple branches, right?
Yeah.
Now if you go to the properties, simple, what is the expression? So what is the where we are getting the number? So we are getting the number in a variable which is called the number. So now to the flow switch, what we will give in the input, we will only pass the number. Simple. Now this can be string. So if our input is, let's say A, B, C, D, so we will change this to string. If it is true, false, we will change this to, Boolean. But for our case,
Mm,
it is integer. So we go to integer. Now I will just connect like this and like this. So this is the default case. That means this is the case. Now this is the 0. Now I can have control C, control V. I will have multiple like this. Sorry. And if I have to change the condition, we have to just click on this arrow. Okay. And if I go to the properties, it is says the case 0. So one, if you are giving it 0, so what should it print, right? So like we don't have 0, we have 1, right? So
one. Mm,
okay, 1 is already existing here. Okay, let's first go to 1. If it is 1, then we want to have Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah, in the double quotes because this is string. So we type here Sunday. Okay. And if it is 2, let me go here to the properties. If it is 2, right, and then we go here in the properties, I type here Monday. Okay. Now what happens if the user gives me 10? So I cannot configure it for 100, 200, 1,000,000, 2,000,000, right? So I
Mm,
only have a limited set. So I only have option from 1 to 7,
7.
right? So now I can handle it in the default. So for 1 to 7, I will create anything. But if it is not matching, right? So what I will do is I will just type a message that it is not valid. Okay. So what does it mean? You ask the input a number. If you pass it correctly, you will get it. But if you are passing something irrelevant, then you will get a no, message called not valid. Okay. Let us try to run this file now. Number. Okay. So I have configured it for 1. 1. Okay. It's Sunday, right? And
Mm,
run the file, and 24 not valid. So you got the difference between the flow switch and the flow decision. Any questions here?
no.
You're good, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Hmm. Okay, let me go back. Now that you understand the sequence, the flow chart, so this would be a question that can be asked to interviewer whenever you are preparing for an interview, that what are the different kind of workflows we can have in UiPath. So we can have 4 type of workflows: sequence, flow chart,
Mm,
state machine,
mm,
and the global handler. So now I hope you can differentiate between the sequence and the flow chart, right?
yeah, yes.
What one thing about UiPath, you can always click on any activity, right click on it, and you can just click on this help button. Okay. So as of now, let's say I want to know more about sequences. I can right click and it will directly navigate me to the sequences. Okay, and you can read about this here. What is sequence? What is flowchart? So as of now, we just look at the sequence and we look at the flow switch also we looked at, right? So there would be one example here. See cases, expression, the type argument, we spoke about this, right? So how can we change it? So the type argument, it is default in 32. Then there is something called flow chart, flow decision. So in case you are not sure about any activity, you can always navigate to docs.uipath.com and read the official documentation. Okay.
Okay.
Now the third one is the pretty interesting one, that is called the state machines. Okay, so now what next what we are going to discuss is what are the state machines, how it is different from the flowchart, what are the benefits of state machine, and its execution order. Okay, so now let me give you one extra information that whenever you deal with the real world automation, whenever you are doing a big project or a large project, we always go by the concept of state machines. Inside the state machine we use flowchart and sequence. We never create a enterprise level project with the help of flowchart and sequence, because I cannot have the entire project just lying like the way we are having, right? So if you are dealing or creating an automation for a big company, for your company, so there should be some standards, right? So we
Yeah.
always create the project with the help of state machines. And when I say state machine, there is something called robotics enterprise framework. This
Yeah.
robotics enterprise framework is built on the state machine. So if you understand state machine correctly, you will be able to understand how this thing works. Robotics enterprise framework. Okay.
Okay.
So now the third thing is state machine. Okay. So let us start by going to the PPT. So what is a state machine? So have you seen, we all have seen the traffic signals, right? So at a time it is green, at a time it is red, at a time it is yellow, right? So
Yeah.
is it possible that you can have green and red at the same time? Is it
No.
possible? No, right? Is it possible you can have green and yellow at the same time? No, right?
No.
Because it is a state machine. So this is a real world example of a state machine where at a time either the vehicles will be stopping, they are going, or it will ask you to look, right? It cannot ask you to go and stop. So this is a simple real world example of state machine. So now what is a state machine? A state machine is a kind of workflow which is provided by UiPath. What is the benefit? At a time, the automation or the project will be in only one state. As of now, just think that the automation or the project will be only in one state. You cannot have more than two states at a time. Same like the traffic signal. Okay. Now
Okay. Mm.
how this changing, how is the state changing from red to green, right? So how would it change? Sometime it is the time based. Sometime the traffic signal operator will put a time that after 30 minutes it should change from red to green. Sometime it put a 15 minutes after green to yellow. So it is either time based or by sensing the car on the road. So if there are more cars, it will just put the green one. If there are less car, then it will put the green and the red one, like that.
Mm.
Okay. So that is the transition. Okay, so now have you seen a vending machine?
Yeah. Vendor machine. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So how does a vending machine work? So you insert a money, right? You select the item,
Mm-hmm.
you get the item, and then it returns you the money. So it will happen that if you insert the money, you didn't get the item and it returns you the money. It will never happen, right? Take the example of an
Yeah.
ATM. You insert the card, you put the amount, you put the pin, you put the amount, and then it gives you the money, right? It never gives you the money at the beginning and then ask you for the pin, right? It will first ask you for the pin, then it will give you the money. So everything is happening one by one. You cannot skip the states, right? So if I take example of a vending machine, what are the states? So if I ask you what are the four states you see here?
Yeah. Insert money.
Yeah,
Select. Select item. Vend. Return
right.
money.
So these are the four states. That means that you cannot bypass the state. So what is the benefit of using a state machine? So these two are the example of state machine. This means that you can control the flow. What do I mean by control? You can control this flow, right? So this is a machine you have controlled, right? If you are not inserting money, you are not going to select the item. If you are not selecting the item, it is not going to give you the item. And if it is not vending, it will not return you the money. Now how can I relate the state machine to the UiPath? Now I hope you understand these two, right? These are the real world example. Now if you go to the UiPath state machine, it says that workflows provide you a modeling style in which we can model our workflow in an event driven manner. That means that I can control the execution of my robot. So what does that mean? So if I go back to my UiPath Studio, let me go here and open a robotics enterprise framework. So this robotics enterprise framework is entirely built on state machines. Okay, so what is a state machine? So if I go to the project and if I go to the main, right? So let it open. See, this is how a large enterprise level project looks like, right? So if you will see, They have given the description, everything, initialization. And if I click on this one, see, this is nothing but all are state machines, right? State. We go to the properties, these are state. So this is the robotics enterprise framework, as it is entirely built on the state machine. So what happens if you will, if I ask you what is happening here, so you will say the process is starting, right? Then it is
Mm.
going to the initialization state. If the initialization is successful, then only it goes to the get transaction, right? And if the
Yeah.
initialization is failing, it will end the process. So that
Okay.
how it is working on the basis of states, and it is controlled like the way the vending machine is getting controlled, right? So like the way vending machine was starting, then you put the money, you select the item. So you cannot directly go from here to, let's say, here, right? There is no way to directly go to the process, right? So you have to first check all of this, then only you can go to the process transaction. So that is why state machines in UiPath Studio, because you can control the execution flow in an event driven manner. So that is what this slide means. Workflow. State machine is a type of workflow that provides you a modeling in which you can model the workflow in an event driven manner. Next, it uses a finite number of states in its execution. Okay, what do you mean by finite? So I cannot have an infinite number. So how many states you see in the robotics framework? How many states you see as of now?
One, two, three, four.
Four, right? So these are finite. So you cannot have a state machine where you have infinite number of transaction, and every for from going one condition to another condition, there should, from going one state to another state, there is some condition. Without this condition getting passed, I am not going anywhere. You understand this one, right? So that's why
Yeah.
state machines. One more important thing about state machine is that you will see it is triggered whenever there is something trigger happening. So how will the initialization come to the get transaction when the this state is successful? So this is why it says it is whenever it is triggered by an automation. Now important question, the interviewer asks you how many states you have in the robotics enterprise framework. So what you are looking into my screen, this is a RE framework, which is called the robotics enterprise framework. All the projects, the enterprise level projects, are built in the robotics framework. Now the basic question about RE framework is how many states you have. So now I hope you have the answer that you have four states in RE framework. Okay, even if you don't know the inside, but at least you know there are four states in the robotics enterprise framework. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now what it says. So there are transitions that allow you to go from one state to another, that is represented by arrow or branches. So this is nothing called the transition. So in a state machine, this is a state machine. These are the states and this is the transition. As simple as that. Okay, now you might be thinking that just now you have shown me a flow chart and now you are showing me a flow state machine. So can you tell me the difference between two? If I ask you without going to the slide, what is the difference you feel?
Difference between flowchart and state machine.
Yeah,
Um, um, Flowcharts have an infinite number of
right,
uh, state transitions, unlike state machines that have four.
right. Finite number, correct. Okay. Any other difference that you can think of?
Um, uh, which other difference can I think of?
No, no, that's okay. That's okay. You can tell me the wrong answer. We are not here to give you the score. That's okay. Whatever comes to your mind, tell me.
Okay, I'm not sure
Yeah.
about. Okay, for flowcharts, I think we have different types of like we have the decision
Mm-hmm.
aspect of flowcharts. We
Okay.
have what do they call it again? Where you have two options and three options. I'm trying
Okay. So
to
you are
different.
okay. So you are saying that you have integer and string, and then you have object, but now it is not available in the state machines, right?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let us go and see together what is the difference. Okay. The first one, state machines are suited for the complex transactions. We can have n states, for example, REFramework. So this n is now a finite number, right? You cannot have an infinite number. So now assuming that if I give you a situation that okay, so you have to build automation where you have to first take the input from the user. If the input is less than 18, he is eligible to vote. Now, if the country is India, then you have to check whether his income is less than 500 or income is more than 500. Then you have to check how many members are in the household. If there are 6 members in the household, then you have to check if the vehicle is available in the home. Then you have to check if it is a two-wheeler or if it is a four-wheeler. So if I ask you to design this process, just think of what a big structure you will create in flowchart, right? You will just go by writing if, then else, then if, then else, and it will be a very big, difficult to manage. So
Yeah.
whenever you have a complex transition, state machines are the best. Okay, so state machine, just a piece of advice, whenever doing an automation for a company or any firm, and if it is a complex one, always use the REFramework. Okay. Next, flowchart does not support transition. We can wait for an specific action. So flowchart does not support transition, right? So here I have this transition. So what is this transition? So if you will see, I am telling whenever the initialization state will go to the end state whenever there is a system exception. Now, what is the definition of system exception? So if I double click, it says the system exception is nothing. So if I just tell you about more about the REFramework, it is checking. If I just double click, okay, it says that first you read the configuration file, you read some data, you invoke the workflow file. This is all exceptional handling done. So if I ask you to do all this stuff in a flowchart, it will be very difficult. So what it means, the transition, that you can decide on what factor you want to go to the next state. In flowchart we have only two things, right? True and false, right? Either
Yeah.
it is true,
True.
either it is false, either it is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. If I have to write a condition, that you have to write a condition if the system error is nothing, if you are, so if I ask you to write a condition in a flow chart that if there is no system error in the process, then only you go to the process transaction. You can write it, but it will be difficult. So with the help of state machines, you sorry, state machines support transition, and we can wait for a specific action. What do I mean by wait? For example, uh, this new transaction. So what is happening here? So it is getting the transaction data, it is getting something to transact, and if there is a new transaction, then only it goes to the process stage. That means I can hold my automation till this stage and not to this stage. I cannot directly come from initialization to the process state, right? So can I use the same thing in the flowchart? So if I go to the flowchart, right, and if I have to stop the flowchart, so I can only have the if and else, right? I cannot stop the process from going to here to here. So if you will see, this is the benefit which the state machine gives me, because I can control the flow of execution. Flowchart uses the concept of branching. State machines are suited for continuous running process. So whenever there is a branching means true and false, or the finite set of inputs, then only we go by the flowchart. Otherwise, state machine is suited for a continuous running process. For a long process, we always go by the state machines. Now, what is the benefit? First of all, it is flexible, it is easy and to add and remove the state. So I can always go ahead and remove this if I don't want, remove it, and then I can connect it from here like this. See, and I can give the new transition. But if I have to do the same thing in the flow chart, I will mess up the entire flow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, Next, this business logic is separate from the implementation. So do you understand business logic? What do you mean by business logic?
Mm,
Any idea?
business logic.
Okay.
Separate business logic.
Yeah.
Implementation. Like the business
Okay.
logic.
So just
Does it have to
I
do with business process
I
or
will ask you a
procedure?
question. I will ask you a question. Okay. So if you are a developer and you are writing an automation, okay, which is the best approach? So uh First you have to open Excel. Okay, then you have to paste
Mm-hmm.
the data. So this data is a business data, some business critical data. Okay, and then you have
Yeah.
to send an email. Okay, so now there are three steps in the process. So as a developer I can create everything in a single workflow, in a single sequence, one by one by one. That first open the Excel, then paste the data, then send the email. So everything is happening in a sequence. So I have created a sequence, and inside the sequence I have put it like this. Right now, what is the drawback of using this approach? You will see I have clubbed the business logic with the system logic. What it means is that the business logic is changing. This is a critical data, and if something happens to the business logic, so if there is an exception in the opening Excel, this thing will fail, and again this thing will also fail. Right, but now if I ask you, is the business
Okay.
logic separate from the system? So this is system and this is business. So is this business logic separate from the system logic? What do you say? It is
No.
separate? No, right? Because it is one by one. So what do you think? Where we
Mm.
should keep the business logic separate, or we should not keep the business logic separate?
Uh,
Just think of any
we should.
automation. So think of, you are doing automation for your company, right? So let's say you are doing an IE automation, Internet Explorer automation. So if IE is crashing, so do you want the business to get an email that today IE Internet Explorer is not working? Or let's say your bot is failing, so do you want the business to know that your bot is running out of space? Or let me give an example. You have coded something wrong and you are getting an exception. So do you want your exception to go to business, that okay, your code has written null reference
No.
exception? No, right? Because there is
Yeah.
a layer between system thing and the business thing. So whatever is related to the business, we called it as the business logic, and whatever else is related to the system, such as opening the Excel, Internet Explorer, getting the exception, data table, everything technical stays with the system thing. So now if I have to separate the business logic from the system logic, it is difficult to manage in the flowchart. But if you will see the robotics enterprise framework, this is system, this is the system, and this is where the actual business logic lies, in the process transaction, this guy.
Okay.
So
Okay.
here you will
Okay.
have
Okay.
the business logic in this process transaction, and
Okay.
all these are the system thing. So that's why state machine, with the help of state machine, you have separate business logic for the implementation. Now you understand this line, or you want me to explain it
Yeah.
more?
Yeah. No,
Okay,
I get it now. I get it now.
okay. Next, there are multiple transition from a state. This is a interesting one. Okay, so let me just do a control Z. So if you will see here, right, what is this guy doing? If it is saying that if the initialization is successful, you go here, and if it is system exception, it goes here, right? So from one
Mhm.
state I can move to two different states, right? And I can have one more state like this. I can connect like this, and then I can give a transition condition. So multiple transition from a state is possible. Self transition states, so if I want to repeat this logic again and again, let's say I want to repeat this logic 3 times, so I can always have a self transition like this, like this. So if you'll see, okay, let me put a self loop here. Okay, like, okay, and see, can you see, I can have a
Yeah.
self loop. So based on some condition, you can repeat the same state again and again. So that is also possible with the help of state machine. And then there are n number of final states, so you can have more than one final state. Okay, so these are the some of the terms you will see when you go and working with a state machine, that what is state, entry, exit, transition. These are some of the things which you will see whenever you are working with a state machine. So I am not going to explain, you can just have a read. That is just for your knowledge, that these are the terms. So state, now I hope you understand state, entry, action, these are the some of the things. Let us quickly go to the state machine now. Now before going to the state machine, let us see how exactly it looks like. So I am created a, sorry, I've created a sequence. So if I go here, how do I create a state machine? I go here and I select on the state machine. Okay, like this, create. So this is what I have presented with a state machine. Now if you go to the activity, similarly when I write flowchart here, I was getting all the things which are related to the flowchart. Now if I write
Mm.
here state machine, I will give everything, I will get everything related to the state machine. So a state machine, this is a state machine. Now what, this is a state and this is a final state, this guy. So I can have more than one final state. So start, then a state, and then a final state. So the robotics framework which we were just looking, this guy, in the main.xaml, this guy, this one, this is all built on state machines. Okay, so it has a start and then this node. So this is our start and then state and then something called final state. Okay, so if I go and double click on the state, this looks something like this, state. So every state has something called entry, exit, and then we have something called the transition. Okay, so as of now, you don't require much of the state machine, but I am quickly run through that how the state machine execution work, right? So whatever comes first, the entry block is executed. Okay, next the transition is executed, and after that the exit block is executed. Okay, so whatever activity you will put in the entry block will execute first, then it will execute the transition, and then the exit block will execute. So this is the order of execution of a state machine. So just remember, you don't need to go into more of the details as you are just starting, but just for your information, this is how the state machine works. And then we have a final state which is only having one state, which is called the this one, final state. If I go here in the final state, it is nothing but only one state. Okay, so this is how the state machine works, demonstrating. So I will share a video with you. Okay, in that video I am explaining the all the details of the state machine, that what is this, is how this flow works. But as of now, for your knowledge, you should be aware that there are four kind of workflows: sequence, flowchart, state machine, and a global handler. This global handler I will park for a while, because this you will understand when you understand exceptional handling. But just remember that there is something called a global handler also. Okay,
Okay.
so now
Mm.
a quick recap, how many type of workflows we can have. I will take test also, is that okay?
Yeah.
How many type of workflows we can have in your UiPath Studio?
4.
Okay, what are they?
Sequences,
Mm-hmm,
workflow,
mm-hmm.
state machine, and except global handler. Abi.
Okay, okay. Now if I have to design a workflow where I have a branching, a true and a false branching, which is the best type of automation? Is it a
Uh,
sequence or is it a flowchart?
flow chart,
Okay, so which is the best automation that is suited for the industry project or the enterprise level project?
state machine.
State machines, cool. So
Mm.
these are the some of the questions which you might get when you doing a developer training or going for a fresh interview.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that
And
okay
then,
if I ask you the is the such questions like?
yeah, I'm fine, very fine.
Okay.